Hello, everyone. We've had some time to digest the announcements from Microsoft Ignite, and we want to share some of our thoughts around employee engagement. Hello, I'm Daniel Glenn. I am from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a Microsoft MVP, and I work for InfoWorks. Please join me in welcoming Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Daniel. My name is Sarah Haase. I'm also an Office Apps and Services MVP based out of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. Darrell?
Yes, I'm Darrell Webster from Auckland, New Zealand. I am adoption architect for Datacom and MVP of something, minimum viable professional.
And so we are just going to talk about a few topics around this employee engagement, what really that means to us, and give you our opinions on what Microsoft announced. I'd like to kind of kick off and talk a little bit about the some of the numbers that were shared around communities, around, I guess, Microsoft Yammer, and some of the things that just really kind of surprised me. It was just good to get some of these numbers. 3.5 times increase in key engagements, and meaning posts and liking message. 3.5 times increase in 1 year. 5 times more live event attendees in Yammer in a year. 2 times the views of questions, and 2 times community membership joins. So people joining Yammer. So there's a lot of increase of activity in Yammer, and I'm seeing that in customers' environments as well. So I think that's really awesome, kind of increase in usage in Yammer. What do you guys think about those numbers? Does that surprise you at all?
Well, there is one other number that I saw, which I think comes out of a regular employee engagement survey. And it is no surprise that COVID and working from home and being in isolation results in the feeling of isolation. 15% of people feel connected to their organizations. And I'm glad I'm doing this session with you guys, because this is the one closest to my heart, which is, how do we keep ourselves connected to our organization? I think that's a important stat to keep in mind as we keep talking today.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that, if we think back historically, right, the question has been raised many times, what's the future of SharePoint? And I think the same question has been posed for years about what is the future of Yammer, right? We just weren't sure the direction that it was going. And last year they announced at Ignite, right, that they were going to be investing heavily in the Yammer roadmap. This year is all about the year of Yammer, right? So they've redefined the look and feel of what Yammer looks like. They've completely changed the user interface. We're seeing more new features dropping in the roadmap than I think we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years of Yammer development combined. So there's a ton of positive energy and love being put into Yammer. It's engaging with things like Outlook in new ways and Teams in new ways. So I think it's kind of, for Yammer, it's a perfect opportunity given 2020, the way of the world, work from home, new features, new UI design, it's kind of all coming together.
Yeah, and if you watched any of the sessions about Yammer, or that included Yammer, you got the kind of the spiel of the 3 pillars of what Yammer is all about. Yammer is about communities, it's about knowledge, and it's about engagement. Communities, and I like the way they phrase this, communities is allowing for connecting with people that have similar backgrounds or interest. And I think that plays into this whole, we're all have had a season of remote working. Some of us are back in person, but a lot of us are still remote. And how do we connect with those that have similar interests and have similar backgrounds? And that's what Yammer is for us, for those communities to allow for that to happening. And so as we've seen this year, Yammer is talking about communities more, right? We're getting a communities app in Teams. We're getting communities app for mobile. We're going to be, focusing on this community aspect. So I think for me, one of the biggest aspects that when I look at Yammer, the new Yammer, as it's been posed, one thing that I saw and noticed was a lack of using all the space that was available for the Yammer pages. And what was announced was a better homepage design and use of space for Yammer and in the communities area. So it is utilizing that full space of on the left and right, as well as the middle for that communication space, so that we can, really get an engagement. It's not, yes, the focus is about those conversation and about engaging with each other, but fully utilizing those other areas, I think, is something that I really enjoyed seeing that they were putting some focus on.
Yeah, we did see some good examples with that. The different sidebar elements that traditionally with Yammer, it also tried to cover that space of teamwork, and now it's been firmly placed in the strength that it has in communities, and teamwork is up to teams. So what to do with that sidebar, and now it's about what can we drive in terms of engagement and highlight and make things accessible from that sidebar that will support community engagement.
Yep, I would agree. And we're starting to see functionality being rolled into Yammer that really is about enterprise level content publishing in a way that frankly didn't exist before. So we tend to think, when we think about publishing content for the intranet or for the company at large, we've always thought SharePoint, intranet sites, and news. But now we're getting this capability in Yammer where you could actually have a content strategy and engage in that. And one of my favorite new features that they talked about is actually the featured conversations in Yammer, where if you are a Yammer admin, you can actually take a post and you can actually make it featured. So it will go to the top of everyone's home Yammer feed, and it will automatically be included in the news discovery emails that are going to be sent out. But here's the great thing. It's intelligent. So if I publish or feature a post in Yammer, Darrell, once you've seen it, you'll no longer be prompted to see the same thing again.
Yeah.
So it's going to get and frame it so that it's an individual purpose, and you can feature something for up to, I think, 30 days, but you can also set a scheduled date and time. So you can feature something for only 5 days or 7 days, up to 30 days. And I think that is incredible, and it really ties in. And I know I want to come back to this idea of SharePoint News, because now we're seeing Yammer features, and it's really taking us to a whole new level.
What did you guys think of the question posts, how they've changed?
Well, I think the question post really for me is one of the core aspects I see people using Yammer for, and it will really help with that, is I want to know information and getting their answers to to my questions quickly, and then it being highlighted and showing which ones are the best answer. I really like that functionality. And again, I find people had already set up what we would call communities. It's not what Microsoft is calling, but setting up communities around this kind of question and answer, this Q&A kind of thing. And so bringing that functionality, enhancing that functionality, I think is wonderful.
Yeah, there's one thing announced at Ignite here about the question post, in that if you intended to ask something as a question, you can change your post type to a question. But secondly, if the purpose of the group, the core purpose, is to ask questions and get answers, then you can make that the default post. And further to that, what we often see with question and answer type forums is, yeah, I've got that question too. I'm going to bump that up. I'm going to upvote that and say, so it's more than just liking something, but you're actually taking an active role to bump that question up so that it's easier to find, and you're signaling that this is something that I'm interested in, which of course results in more engagement.
And
and it really reminded me about the communities, the SharePoint site template that we used to have, which was exactly that. I'm going to ask a question, I can upvote and do all of that. So I think it was great functionality, but bringing that into Yammer, I think, is a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Post on behalf, any thoughts on that?
Yep.
The meaning that like a leader, and this is often we see this when a leader needs help with forming an email and putting it out there or writing a blog post. Now someone can post on behalf of their leader into Yammer, and some reaction to that, in that where's the authenticity in that sense? That voice doesn't sound or feel like my leader. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
I think it reflects the reality for some conversations, and I think different leaders are going to approach this different ways. I think it's great if you have a leader who is able to and desires to engage with people directly, and I think that's always going to be the best case scenario. But in some companies, you're going to have a corporate communications department who's going to basically maybe work with the leader, but they're going to proxy send out that message. And so for them being able to do content publishing and posting on behalf of someone else, I think for some companies, it's just a reality of the way that they do these things and manage those communications.
I would caution people to, yes, use this functionality, but use it in a way that the leader actually writes the content. And it's really just a gap of that leader knowing how to, or even having time to go through the process of publishing. And that is someone else's role. And so they do the posting on behalf of. I would not want to see organizations, I think it's just like you're talking, you mentioned, Darrell, it's not very genuine if I'm writing a post for someone else and it's kind of like a ghostwriting. I don't want that. I want organizations have the leader write it, send the email to somebody and say, please post this or whatever it is. But I would rather see that to keep it genuine. I think for what Sarah had brought up about, having those posts and having those featured conversations really in conjunction with the announcements that admins are going to be able to mute communities and so they don't show up in the feed for everyone. They'll just show up for those that are actually part of those communities. And in conjunction with that, you can make the all company feed be restricted for posting, so that it's not everyone can post there. I really think that when you bring all of that together, it is really bringing that feed, that it could be that feed that you go into, be very valuable. Having those priority announcements, having those featured conversations, having really that clean surface where it's not everybody posting accidentally in all company or whatever. I really feel like that feed is going to be now a lot more rich, right, and a lot more valuable to employees.
There was there's another feed that was that has been affected. Integration with Teams. Right, we've got the Communities app within Teams. We've had that for a little while now. Integration with the Teams mobile app, I've never really used that because of this very fact that when you get notifications, where do they appear? In your Yammer app, or if you've missed them, in email. But one announcement at Ignite was that the Yammer announcements will appear in the Teams app if you have the Communities app connected to Microsoft Teams. Do you think that'll help drive engagement from within Teams?
What I've seen in talking to users is that for those of them that really love living in Teams every day as the frame around which that they do their work, yes, I think that there are some users that maybe have not engaged in Yammer previously, that if Yammer Communities is pinned to their navigation rail in Teams, that it will increase that experience, and having those notifications appear in Teams only makes that an even richer interface. I think those that have been using Yammer, either the Yammer desktop application or in the browser window for quite a while, I don't know that I see them transitioning to using it predominantly within Teams, because it's kind of nice to have the full frame view. But I think we might get some conversion of people who are otherwise not engaged with Yammer.
I think seeing the Yammer notifications, and they talked about a few of them, types, at mentions, or announcements in the communities you belong to, interweaved with your other notifications, it makes it more like the activity feed is your Teams inbox. And so we already have that experience and that feeling of Outlook. Everything comes into one inbox. I can manage it there. Now you'll have the different types of communication from Yammer, from Teams coming into there too. I did like the suggestion of pinning the Communities app below the Teams app. Now just visualize this with me. Chat for private conversations, Teams for team-based conversations, Communities for open and public conversations across your org. It's that nice spectrum, 1, 2, 3.
I actually like that one as well.
Yeah.
Because you can also take the Yammer Communities and you can add it as a tab within a team or in a channel. And that's certainly nice, but I always recommend to people, if you want to engage with Yammer via Teams, pinning the Yammer Communities app in your Teams navigation rail is going to give you the A+ experience.
I agree with that. And you do that in the Teams admin center, and that's how you can move those pins we're talking about on the left-hand side. One thing that I briefly want to mention is interactive emails, because Darrell, you mentioned email and how we are engaging with the content. I absolutely love this. It is you're getting an email with Yammer information because you haven't seen it, and it's one of those, okay, here is the content. And not only we're going to be able to read it, which is okay, fine, we're going to be able to interact with that content in email. What I mean by interact is like and respond to that content. Oh, and by the way, we've got new likes, right? We can do the different likes and celebrate and all that. But I'd really love that capability to be able to just do it in my email, so I don't have to open up a different app if I'm in my email. So I think that was a great announcement and showcasing that functionality.
So another part of the integration into Teams, which is front and center with employee engagement and keeping people informed, is that sites integration. That we'll be able to see our intranet as a tile, or as an app, and then opening up that menu. But zeroing that down into leadership connection, what are your thoughts on how this might help people find those leadership connection sites? And, well, by the way, connection site.
Sarah, do you have some comments on that?
I was waiting for you to go. You go for it, Daniel.
Well, I think, take a step back, the leadership connection, it is that functionality, bringing the voice, and that's the way I'm looking at it, bringing the voice of leadership into your users. And I think we have, there is always in every organization, no matter how hard you try, there's a disconnect between leadership and the decisions that are being made and the people who actually have to live with the decisions and enact those decisions. It just is. No matter how hard you try, you can't have everyone in the room when the decisions are made. You just can't. And so I think we all struggle with this at varying degrees. And so bringing that leadership voice into your intranet and into those places. And remember, this is all about employee engagement, right? So engaging employees where they are so you can bring that information to them, I think is very, very important.
The thing that I saw and liked too was how quickly we can get a leadership connection site going. Now, I know that leadership connection could just be seen as, oh, we've got a community so we can have conversations, or we have live events, which we'll talk a bit about soon. But it's the SharePoint frame of a page that brings that all together and makes it easy for us to engage in and consume. So being able to take a existing site or create a new leadership connection site using this new leadership connection template means that it's very easy for organizations to frame up that page with the core things, news, posts that our leaders can make, with help if they need it. The Yammer conversations that are embedded in as part of that, and that'll link through to live events too if you have an AMA or questions and answers and live events that side, or also the coming or upcoming events. So those three web parts, I don't know if there was anything else down the page. That's going to be easy to spin up a new one or reframe an existing page that might have those elements already.
Yeah, the one thing that I would really recommend that people look about from an information architecture and a planning perspective, though, is to make sure that as they're thinking about this leadership connection site template, to make sure that they understand what they want to use that leadership connection site for and what they want to use their home site for, and not to necessarily create two things that are trying to get at the same purpose. So make sure that you understand how they're going to play in together. Are you going to surface some information on your home site, for example? So that's important to think about.
Yeah, and you can use them in conjunction with each other. I think just like when should you use Teams and when you should use Yammer? Well, your organization needs to figure that out, with some guidance around Yammer being that place where you have communities where you engage with each other and share knowledge. And Teams is where you have those conversations and you can have those meetings and ongoing information on projects and those kind of things within your groups. Just in that same way, you can utilize the leadership connection for just that, like I was mentioning before, engaging with leadership and sharing strategies or initiatives or business needs, and then using your home site for that could, and using SharePoint and your intranet for plug into that most certainly, but also use that for what we've been traditionally using SharePoint for, which is news and links and bringing all that information together. And as a launching point and a location for your users to have a home.
Right? Sarah, thinking of news, you mentioned something earlier about what we can do with news now and how it connects through to Yammer.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. So if you are creating a news article within SharePoint, you're now going to have the ability to automatically share that right to Yammer from the SharePoint news page itself. And what's even better is that they really integrated it so you can set it up and literally ask a Yammer question, a poll, or do praise in the Yammer post that you're going to automatically post to Yammer with the SharePoint news article. And you get to choose which Yammer group, or community, I should say, that you want to post the news article to. And so having that automatic integration, we're really seeing that I think news and Yammer is coming together in really new ways to provide a more complete, as I mentioned before, content publishing strategy.
And it's actually driving.
And it's a rich preview.
Yeah, that's right.
It's going to have that rich preview of that SharePoint.
Yeah, that's something that's been missing for a while. But I like you said, Sarah, what I think about the question and the poll is it's immediately driving engagement with that content. This is not just a broadcast. Yeah. This is not just a, hey, look, this is an article you should read, but what do you think? And as soon as you get that conversation thread going, and if you're careful with the question and make sure it's quite provocative or a poll, then you are going to get that kind of engagement around the news and people will read it. Then we just throw in things like upvotes and highlighted conversations and boom, you've got something really, really engaging.
It's a great way to be able to seed those conversations in Yammer and kind of, not that we can't still do SharePoint news article or page comments, but let's face it, Yammer's got such an incredibly greater experience for that. So it's a great way to be able to use the SharePoint news post, elevate it, and spark more and deeper conversations.
Well, one thing that Yammer will have a leg up on other products in the Microsoft suite is they announced nested replies. Yeah. So being able to have the nesting, meaning we can have that little bit of a tree of conversation instead of just one level of replies where you don't know who's talking about what. So those nested replies, I think, is big.
People who want a nested user interface where they want things indented underneath other things are jumping up and down for joy. That feature, for some might seem innocuous, but for others makes the difference because they want it to be indented.
Replies to replies. It's not enough to... I know we've had that with Yammer where you can hover over and say in reply to, and you can see what conversation it was indented. We're used to it across other platforms. It's going to help drive engagement because you'll be able to follow that thread of conversation.
Yeah, even though we've had this in reply to functionality, you had to click on it to see what that was in reply to take you to that. So this threaded replies or nested replies is going to be great. So for anything else we want to talk about sites before, we talk a little bit about live events?
No, I think live events is good to switch to that now, and thinking about how that can drive the engagement in real time to begin with. We've talked about these asynchronous, asynchronous types of posts, and I don't know, I'm getting it wrong here, but now it's about, okay, well, if we open up with something that's live, like we've had with live events, and thinking of those stats you said earlier, Daniel, about how many organizations have relied on these live events to keep people informed, to give them some guidance and encouragement through these hard times, and telling people what the direction is. That broadcast and use of live events has been on the increase for sure.
5 times more live event attendees in Yammer. I mean, that's a great, huge increase, and I think that really talks about where people want to, first of all, where it's easy for those that want to host these live events to kind of kick it off, as well as where people are to engage with them. And so Yammer being that place, yes, you can do live events in other places and kick them off from within the suite, but with Yammer we do get that additional functionality around the content. It's not necessarily within the content, but around the content that we can utilize to engage employees.
So there's some bullet points there I have for updates for that. They're shifting the conversation to being beside the live events. You don't have to scroll down the page to engage in the content and get that little preview. The question post, again, if you make that the default type for the event, then you're going to see Q&A. I did check too with the Yammer team. One of the advantages that Teams has over Yammer for a live event is it's got better moderation, so that you can choose to display posts or not. Whereas Yammer, it's open, it's there. If someone gets naughty, whatever. They are looking to do moderation within Yammer Q&A for live events, which is good. And I think the other thing too is the engagement stats that we can have afterwards. We all want to know, well, how many people attended, but where was the drop off? Who attended? In fact, you can go in and see what department they were from, what location they were from, and you can see when people are engaging with certain types of questions and content throughout the live event. Massive updates there.
Yeah, and I think positioning, because we always get these questions, positioning, I feel like Yammer live events are really those that are internal. I just feel like that's kind of where it's being positioned, live events being internal on Yammer. If you're wanting to have a live event where you're engaging with external people as well, maybe it's anonymous or just with your clients or with your customers or whatever, then maybe Teams is that, place where you go to have that event with them.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up around engagement? Certainly for me, like Sarah said earlier, it's been great to see the rapid development around the need. And we've seen that around improved meetings. We've seen that around other products as well. And Yammer has, I've seen organizations launch into Yammer purely because they've had to meet a need for COVID and trying to engage their employees. So any final thoughts around this?
That would actually be where my final thought is. I think that there are a lot of companies that looked at Yammer, said it's Facebook for the enterprise, and then they set it aside and said, maybe we'll come back to it someday. I think those companies that haven't taken a close look at how Yammer can actually help their employees connect, engage, and get questions answered need to take another look, because the features that we've talked about here today are not just fluff. They're core to being able to get your employees engaged and share out those news and live events internally. And it's even more important now with COVID and work from home. So if you haven't looked at Yammer seriously before, this is the time.
Yeah, and I think really we started off this session talking about the importance of engaging and really connecting with those that are around you. I feel like all of the announcements that Microsoft has made and even the functionality that's already there that they've started off with is really driving toward that. So stay connected, stay informed, and stay engaged. And Yammer helps you do all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that last theme I'd finish off is we see Yammer loves Teams, Yammer loves SharePoint, and just seeing all this integration, that it is not so much of a choose this product for this purely. I know we get into discussions about what tool when, but I see a picture here around engagement of collections of things that are going to enable engagement, and it was great to see those themes through there too.
Yep. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Darrell. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and hearing our thoughts on employee engagement from the announcements from Microsoft Ignite. Bye-bye.
See ya.